All right, so you can see in a C3 Corvette, you got speedo, you got a factory tack, and you got this whole cluster of shit over here. It's got the temperature gauge, you got the gas gauge, you got the oil temp gauge, oil pressure, and battery. So I'll run you through real quick how I got all those gauges working. And it's not too difficult, just more so for a reminder of somebody, or if somebody's never done it before. You can see we put a really nice fresh LS1 in this thing. The first gauge would have been the temperature gauge we'll talk about. The factory small block Chevy had it over there on the driver's side of the engine. The LS engine, I utilized the port back there on the head. You can see that ICT billet built aluminum piece right down here. That's an adapter from metric into a 3/8 NPT thread that the original sender screwed back into to get the factory gauge working for temperature on the dash. The second one I'm going to talk about is going to be the tack. Your tack signal on these cars, got a few leaves there. Your tack signal on these cars is right up here. It's a tan wire that used to go into the distributor. The Terminator X utilizes a blue and white wire for the tack signal output, and that was nothing more than connecting those two together and you have your tack running. So that was pretty simple there. Your gas gauge, of course, that's nothing. I put in a new fuel injection fuel tank in it back there and just tied back into the factory wiring, so that was pretty easy. The oil temp on these cars from the factory was a adapter fitting that was down above the oil filter. You won't be able to see much down here at all. You can see it. There's a brass piece. There's like a fitting down there right by the oil filter. That was just, I took the factory setting unit out of the small block, screwed it into there. It's screwed right into the quarter NPT fitting on this oil pan, so that was pretty simple. Plugged the factory wiring in. I had to extend the wiring 6 inches to make that one work. So it was pretty straightforward. The worst part about getting everything working this thing was I ended up buying this Dakota Digital ECD 200BT Speedo box. And what that does is you have to take your speed signal out of your Terminator X, and that speed signal into the input side of that box. The Terminator outputs a PWM, pulse width modulated negative speed signal, which isn't the most user-friendly sometimes. So on this particular box, I wired it all up. It comes with a cable you run to your original Speedo cable adapter on the Corvette here, which is actually out on the firewall. And that just use that. There's a motor inside that box that mechanically spins the speedometer. So it takes the speed signal. Once you get everything all set up, it's a pretty easy setup on that thing. The instructions are pretty good. But the problem I ran into was the speedometer was not working. And I could not figure out what was going on. I called Dakota Digital. I asked them about that PWM negative signal, and they didn't really know. They had no note saying it wouldn't work. So what we ended up doing is we decided on using a pull-up resistor to amplify the signal and turn it into a positive negative square wave, essentially is what it ends up doing, because your Holley outputs that negative signal as a pulse. And what you do is you take your connector for your speedo box, and you take the power that goes to that speedo box, and then you take the speed signal wire that comes from it, and you run like a 10 k ohm resistor between the power and the speedo signals, what you end up doing. And that lets that hot signal, the battery comes through the resistor. You get a little bit of voltage through that thing, gives you the plus. When the Holley pulses the negative, it pulls it low, so it goes high and low. All I had to do to make this thing work was go ahead and tie in that resistor, and it was super simple. So if you got any questions on that, just Google how to run a pull-up resistor into either a tack signal or a speedometer signal. It's really easy to do. I actually was able to put it in the 4-pin connector, soldered them right into there, so it doesn't take up any room. Wasn't very messy at all looking, so it turned out pretty good. But last but not least would have been the oil pressure, and that was super simple in this thing because it came right off of the factory sending unit. Once again, I just bought the Holley. I bought the ICT billet adapter. You can see it right down here that screws into the LS engine to 1/8 inch NPT, and that's the factory Corvette oil pressure sender. So that takes care of all of the factory gauges in a C3 Corvette and makes it so it's a nice simple setup. Customer's happy. All the factory gauges are working now, so it looks pretty good. But thanks a lot, guys. guys. I'm sorry I haven't done many videos. I'm going to try to get on board here and get some more useful knowledge out there if I can. So thanks a lot. Subscribe, like, and comment if you like it.